And joining me now via Skype from Oyo State to discuss the inauguration of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and other issues concerning the Tigray region, which could pose challenges for him to tackle in the coming days, is an international affairs analyst, Amuda Mosigodi. Good to have you join us, Amuda.
Thank you so much for having me.
A new government in Ethiopia, albeit is a previous prime minister, but he's not been sworn in. He's going to form a new government, but all the problems remain. I just want you to speak to that briefly.
Well, I think one will not overlook the fact that Abiy came involved, particularly with the Tigray crisis. It wasn't unexpected. Don't forget that the orb of the concession given to Eritrea by Ethiopia on that borders also on Tigray, and because of that, that explains why the Tigray region is, or the leadership of the Tigray region, are feeling quite aggrieved. Now, in spite of all these issues, Abiy has got another 5-year stint, and without doubt, Eritrea is facing serious economic crisis. Of course, infrastructural challenges are also there, and a lot of other ethnic crises here and there. That also follows the fact that in Tigray that we talk about now, aside Tigray, there are also other areas where it's facing some issues. So that explains so much that Abiy has to do. One only hopes that the enthusiasm that came with his emergence 2017 would also still be there, because if the Tigray crisis is not dealt with, one should not be surprised if other regions within the Ethiopian state also begin to foment trouble, or some leaders in these regions begin to foment trouble, because Ethiopia, as we know, is deeply divided along ethnic lines, and so these ethnic loyalties will always prevail in issues. So he needs to handle this issue properly, and of course give the needed succor to the ordinary Ethiopian, because the ordinary Ethiopian is concerned about the economic situation of the country. He wants to have enough to eat. He doesn't want to go back to the Mengistu's days where there was famine at the night. So it's very important. Let's also not forget the fact that Ethiopia is the second most populous country in Africa, and a very major country in the whole of Africa. So the stability of Ethiopia would definitely spiral to mean the stability of the entire whole of Africa. So it's important Abiy does the right thing and deal with these issues.
And it's interesting you mentioned the Horn of Africa and the impact that all of these could have in that region. But I will get there shortly. But Prime Minister Abiy seems to be desperate in terms of dealing with the crisis in Tigray, and that's judging by the call he made earlier for a formation of anti-TPLF militias across Ethiopia. If people were to heed that call, wouldn't that lead to a larger civil war in Ethiopia?
It may and it may not, because like I said earlier, if you look at the Tigray region, in fact, the Tigrayans are just about 7% of the total population of Ethiopia, and they were in the saddle of power from 1991, when the Mengistu Dreg was overthrown, to when Abiy eventually came on board, and it was like Abiy in the minority ruled the majority. So in the face of that, a lot of other tribal groups within the Ethiopia state were very much aggrieved, in spite of the coalition government and the seemingly nationalist nature of the government. The Tigrayans controlled the government very well, and a lot of the Oromos were feeling quite disenchanted, because if we have the largest population in the state, and then a region or an ethnic group with a very small or minuscule population are the ones controlling the state, then it creates a problem. So some of them are feeling happy that yes, now that the Tigrayans have been, in quotes, put in their place, they feel that now they can also, it will be an avenue for them. But like I said earlier, it may not. Now, it may lead to escalation of crisis, because we already know that issues are already tense. In spite of the unilateral ceasefire that Abiy declared, issues are already tense, and the Tigrayans, as we know them, we know the role they played in the eventual overthrow of Mengistu in 91, and they don't seem ready to back down. So it may lead to escalation of crisis. On the other side, because we may begin to look at the positive and the negatives. On the other side, it may also mean that other tribal groups are getting the signal that, see, the Ethiopian state will not allow any form of insurrection against it. Yes, democratic principles allow for disenchantment, and of course you can express that in every other non-violent way. But that cohesion is needed, because if Tigrayans, have their way, in a way, it would. Don't forget that the fact that Eritrea was not able to have its way, now, in a way, emboldened the Tigrayans. And a very good example of what is happening in Ethiopia now was also what happened in Yugoslavia under Amuda Mosigodi, where the different countries, different tribal groups pulled out, the Serbians, and the likes, because as soon as one group felt, oh, I think we can raise an insurrection against states and stand, then we can go. So Abiy is quite careful, and that's understandable. As much as the program is not acceptable, I think Abiy is also trying to be careful not to create a platform where every tribal group will feel that, well, we can then lead the Ethiopian state.
It looks like the world is waiting, or the international community is waiting with bated breath to see what he's going to do next, especially because he has asked I think that was last week when he asked UN representatives in the country to leave. Do you foresee a change in approach or position from the Prime Minister?
I wouldn't be able to tell exactly if there would be, a change in approach from the Prime Minister in that regard. But one thing that is clear is Abiy definitely knows, he's a man who understands the terrain. He knows that for a person who has won the Nobel Prize, there is so much responsibility on him. And as a result of that, he would need to meet up with these responsibilities. Now, the sending of the 7 UN officials out on the ground that they were meddling in internal affairs has already, even before that, had painted him black before the international community. And now it's getting worse. Now we know that sanctions are coming in from the US, and Ethiopia is becoming the hotbed of international politics now, like a grapple, an extension of the days of the Cold War. So Abiy would definitely understand this, and he also does not want to go into the history books as a pariah for someone who has been celebrated globally. So Abiy may, hopefully, and that's why I said, hopefully, may resolve this crisis. But to resolve this crisis, I think we also have to agree that the Tigrayans also must be willing to come to the table. And it does not seem as if they are ready to do that. The two sides have been trading blames, and one is not seeing any glimmer of hope that one side is ready to back down. Because at the round table, concession is the major thing. And if either of the two sides,
it also seems like you mentioned the sanctions unveiled by President Biden on 17th of September. It doesn't also seem to be having any impact on the warring parties. But I want to circle back to something you said earlier about the Horn of Africa. This is not just an Ethiopian conflict, is it? Because it does also have far-reaching destabilizing impact for the Horn of Africa, especially Somalia and the Red Sea region. I just wanted to speak to that.
Well, we know that Somalia is already facing serious food crisis. Sudan, the same thing. And now the refugees from Ethiopia would necessarily, from Tigray, are moving into these countries, thereby compounding the food crisis that these countries are already facing. Now, the implication of that is that we know that Sudan is already facing its own internal crisis. Somalia is not left out. Now, Ethiopia seems to be the balancing wheel. For years, Ethiopia seems to be the balancing wheel. And now that Ethiopia itself is engulfed in crisis, it will be like what we have in the Middle East, because a crisis in Ethiopia seems to be at the center, and a crisis at the center would definitely spiral to the different what I'll call tributaries, and without doubt we may begin to see maybe some of these if, for instance, the Ethiopian forces are able to rout Tigrayan forces, they will move into a country. and they'll be launching attack. And we see that play out, in the Uganda-Kenya crisis, Uganda-Rwanda, relations and crisis. So one only prays and hopes that this Ethiopia crisis is nipped in the bud early enough before we begin to have. Don't also forget that this crisis also spells the doom of arms proliferation in other countries around the area. Because when you have such crisis as this in a particular country, it means that those countries, neighboring countries, would also begin to go through the problem of and the rigor of arms proliferation. And you can always imagine what that would mean.
And a lot to watch out for. He just took office. Hopefully, we'll know that he would make statements in the coming days on all of these issues. We'll listen out for them. Thank you so much for. Thank you so much for helping us make sense of this, as always. International Affairs Analyst Amuda Mosigodi.